Okay, so my name's Adrian Rodgers. I'm a faculty member at The Ohio State University, and I'm working today with dual degree graduates who are part of USINTEC Partnership. And you can learn more about that at usintec.org. So one of the things that we've been talking about has been, getting into the mindset of being a researcher and lecturer at a university. We've been thinking about establishing lines of research that we can work on over time. And we realized the importance of matching the kind of work that we're writing with a journal that's likely to publish that work. So I thought what we would do next is kind of work with Pastra, who is one of our dual degree graduates and who has just gotten a job at the State University of Semarang, UNES, in Semarang, Jawa Tengah, Indonesia. And she has just graduated with her second master's from UNES and is looking to publish, right, in different kinds of venues. Now, I notice sometimes when I work with Indonesian students, especially doctoral students, that they often use the phrase R&D, research and development, right? And I wanted to give you a little bit of information, cultural information about this phrase. The way this phrase is used in Indonesia is very different than the way it's used in America. And I would even encourage Indonesians who travel outside, at least to America, to probably not use that phrase because it sets a whole set of expectations that are not representative of what you're doing. So research and development in the U.S. context is usually associated with large companies like car companies or pharmaceutical companies. It's usually used in the context of, a company spending millions of dollars on a new drug or inventing a new car or transmission or an electric car or something. It usually has thousands of researchers, like engineers, gathering data over many years, and then it results in some sort of product. And I'm not sure how that phrase came to the Indonesian context, but I can get that it was based on this idea that we need to develop some things and try them out and implement them. But in educational research, especially working with doctoral students or master's students, we're not doing anything on that scale, right? We're doing something that we can conduct by ourselves, that we can do in maybe a few weeks or a few months or at most a year. And that, we might have some collaborators on, maybe some teachers, maybe some children, maybe a school or two or three. And then we report out the findings of that research, right? In some cases, we are developing a product, like we're going to try out a manual or a set of procedures, or you've created a book, or you've created a website, and we want to try that out. So that would be the development part or the product. In other cases, we're trying out a process, like a new way of teaching, or a particular way of teaching. We're teaching this to small groups instead of larger groups. So those might all be possibilities that we could use the phrase R&D about in the Indonesian context, but that we do not want to use that phrase in the U.S. context. So, because it confuses the Americans. So if you were overseas, you might use phrases like, I devised, a manual, and then I tested it, or I conducted classroom research to determine the effects. That would be the kind of phrasing that we might use outside Indonesia. Something that I've noticed that some doctoral students are doing is they feel that just devising it or creating it is enough. I've created the website, that's all I need to do. And indeed, for their committee, the committee may be satisfied that that was sufficient work that should result in the granting of the PhD degree from the university. But what I would say is that for publication, I think you need to have data. And you usually collect data from trialing or trying something out or observing something. So I think if you were to create a book or a website or a set of procedures for something, then you want to try that out and collect data, right? How do students respond? How do teachers respond? What do students and teachers say about this new process or this new product or this website or something? To record that data, like tape it, transcribe it, use multiples of it, collect it over time. So if we're doing, for example, a qualitative study, observe what you have learned about triangulation in qualitative research, validity and reliability in qualitative research. Describe the research method that you have used. So popular qualitative research methods can include ethnography, narrative research, descriptive research, historic research. If it's a quantitative method that you used, popular quantitative methods include experiments, quasi-experiments, correlations, surveys, and of course, mixed methods would include some of both. So I think, devising something by itself and not having any data to support it will make it very difficult to get published. And therefore, collecting data that documents the usefulness of something, whether it be through quantitative or qualitative or both methods, will be important. And that goes to how you'll lay out your article, right? You're going to provide a literature review that would support, your work. You're going to talk about your research method, including your subjects, your design, and your analysis. You'll report your findings. You'll discuss your findings, and then you'll conclude your work. I think a challenge sometimes in the Indonesian context is the significance. So, if you're working with a very small number of children in a small school in central Java, and you're sending your article to some international journal, the journal may think it's a well-documented article, but how is it significant? So, thinking about, is this particular to the Javanese context, or will this be relevant to teachers in other areas? It may not be relevant to an urban school teacher in New York, but it may be relevant to a rural teacher in another similar school in a different country. So thinking about significance and how the readership might use what you have found to help and support their work could be really helpful. And making a case for that in the article could also be really helpful. I think that by observing quality data collection procedures, situating your research in a qualitative or a quantitative tradition, undertaking careful analysis, and then reporting useful findings that will be helpful to the readership of the journal is the kind of thing that's likely